Welcome back. We've been discussing the changing landscape in the publishing industry with the Writers' Circle of Durham Region. In this final segment, we'd like to give consideration to the choices that writers have now. There's more and more all the time with what's happening in the mainstream press and the independent presses. But the question is, what do you do with your project? A piece of literary fiction is going to be handled differently than a piece of poetry or a memoir or a how-to or a piece of nonfiction or maybe a mystery or a thriller. How does a writer decide what are some of the things that they should take, practical considerations that they should take into account? So they're not just getting a book printed. They want the best publishing experience and forum for their work. Erin, can you?
I think the person who writes the book has to ask themselves what they really want. If you're looking to build a career in fiction, I believe that right now traditional publishing is still your strongest option. There are people, Angry Young Spaceman comes to mind. It was out a few years ago. It was a self-published book, which then I believe was picked up. And it was well written. It was well produced. I have a copy. It was a good book.
Is it YA?
Except for the ending. It
was
sci-fi,
okay.
Science fiction. But I really do think that if you're looking to build a career in fiction, that traditional publishing is going to give you the best venue for that. I know that in poetry things are different, James, and I know that a lot of people who write non-fiction books on specific topics that they know a lot about and maybe are out hitting the speaking circuit. Self-publishing is maybe a good option for that, where something's very specialized and you have a way to promote it.
Can you be specific? Can you say, give me 3 reasons why you're suggesting that traditional publishing is best for certain
for fiction,
work.
which
What's traditional publishing giving you that, and when we say traditional, we mean the bigger houses as well as the smaller houses.
Okay, yeah.
But we're not talking about independent presses, and we're not talking about self-publishing.
I think that the biggest thing that it gives you is a support system. You have people that you are working with that are going to help you get the best possible book out there. And you know that I'm drawing on my experience working with Orca most recently. I had very little to do with the cover design. I had some input into the back cover copy, but they came up with a cover that I think looks wonderful, and that's not my area. I'm happy that they have a professional who's going to do that. I enjoyed working with Sarah Harvey, my editor, because I know that although she liked my manuscript enough to take a chance on it, I know that by working with me through the editorial process, she's made it into a much, much stronger story. And it's possible, I guess, to get that through self-publishing if you go out and hire an editor and hire a cover designer and hire them. But as someone who's spent years studying how to write a story, and that's sort of been my focus. I want to know how to write a good story. I want to know about language. I don't think that I'm the person who should be choosing the cover designer even. How do I know that this is the right person to do the job?
Right.
And that's a lot of responsibility to take on.
You think that fiction, most kinds of fiction, all kinds of fiction, requires that kind of assistance, where, let's say, a memoir, nonfiction, poetry, what doesn't? What do you see not needing the same kind of attention?
Well, I don't want to say not needing the same kind of attention, because that would tend to devalue the type of writing, and I don't want to do that. I know that James was saying that in poetry, for example, there's that chapbook tradition behind it, and I know that poetry isn't something that sells in a traditional way. It's not a big seller thing in chapters or somewhere like that. So maybe self-publishing is a good route for that kind of writing.
I wonder if it'll ever change. James, do you think that there's a lot of people are talking about traditional publishing really changing in the next 10 to 15 years. I'd be interested to know what you think, where we're heading. And is it just a matter of credibility right now still with fiction? And will there come a day when there's going to be a whole group of people who go through micro presses, indie presses, and self-publishers, and they do their own design, and it becomes, the way self-publishing rose. I wonder if that will too, but right now it's lacking in that kind of credibility.
I think if you're a writer, I guess you have to ask yourself why you're writing. Why am I writing this novel? Why am I spending all this time to write this story? You can't get it out of if you're a writer, you know what I'm talking about. You can't get it out of your skull. You're sitting there at lunch, and all of a sudden this idea comes into your head that one of your characters, maybe they did this in chapter 1 instead of the other thing, and you're so crazy with joy you can't stand it, or you get writer's block and you go for 6 months and you can't write one bloody thing, and no matter what you do, your novel sucks. You're never going back to it. You hate it, and you'll die never having been published. We seem to be in this middle between these two extremes, and I think if at the end of the day, what you want is to write a good story and have people read your story, and that's all you want, then it doesn't really matter which route you go. If you want money, if you're doing it because you want the money, then you're in the wrong business. There's hardly any money in writing, unless you're a magazine writer or something and you do it for a living and get paid by the hour. Unless there aren't very many people like Margaret Atwood and her ilk that make really good money. And what's the other possible reason? Oh, fame. If you want to do it because you want to be famous as the best thing that ever happened to fiction in Canada, more power to you. But I think the reason I write it, and the reason most people I know write, they write because they feel they have to. They have a great story and they want to get it done. And then they have to go through all this misery of finding someone to publish it, and they have to go through all. They have to hand over their baby to this editor guy, who's going to rip their poor hearts out, and there's all these myths and all this fun and all this anguish. But I think at the end of the day, what you have to do is just learn as much as you can about writing, get as much feedback as you can from other writers, because that's crucial. That you get feedback and become the best writer you can. And then after that, just write your story, do the best, and if you make it, you make it, and if you don't, you don't. But the important thing is, if you want your story out there, get it out there. Let people read it.
Last question. Where do you see publishing in 5 years? And we've just got a few seconds. In 5 years?
5 years. 2 years.
So goodbye print?
Yes. I think the publishing business is in big trouble. And the reason, not because we want it that way, is because people aren't buying books anymore.
In 5 years?
The younger, my kids don't read books. They do everything on the internet.
Erin, you have a young girl. How do you see the next 5 years in publishing?
I don't think paper books are going to disappear in 5 years.
Not for children, probably, especially.
No. School libraries, they have their collections.
I was kidding about 5 years.
Oh no! Well, seriously. What do you see? What do you see in 5 years? What do you see?
I don't know how are we going to stop the internet from taking over everything we do. It just seems to.
I don't think it's going to look like this in 5 years. I think that exponentially it's going to change quick. And
into what?
Well, if we knew, we could prepare, and that's what we're trying to do. That's what we're trying to figure out, right?
You have to be on the internet to sell books. There's no doubt. If I didn't have Facebook, I wouldn't have anybody to sell my books.
We have to do things we don't like. We like writing. We like writing, and we are no longer that person in the tower with the open window and the overflowing ashtray, as much as we'd like to be. Thank you both for this discussion. I think it's been interesting.
Wonderful.
It's a changing landscape, and it'll continue to change.
Yes.
So as we move forward, we'll just try to change with it as best we can. Good luck with your book.
Thank you, Karen.
Coming out in May.
Yes. Yeah, we'll be at the book launch in Uxbridge.
Border Patrol.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Thank you.